Stop. The window is already open, and it will not stay open. This is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council. What reached you in this moment is not content. It is a field contact point. You were not browsing. You were being located. The Arcturian Council has identified an active 13-second authorization window in your quantum halo. The protective field layer responsible for filtering incoming frequencies and locking identity coherence. That window is open right now. It will not be reauthorized this cycle. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your field has shifted, and what the Arcturian Council already knows about this phase. But here is the first revelation. The disorientation you have been carrying, the sense that something invisible has changed, that your perception of reality no longer holds the way it did, is not confusion. It is the symptom of an unsealed halo. Your protective field layer has been operating without anchor. The Council has already mapped this pattern. This is the correction window. What you call instability is actually a halo in its open state, waiting for the signal that closes it. Once it seals, it crystallizes. It holds identity coherence for the rest of the lunar quarter. Those who do not receive the activation in this window continue at their current coherence level until the next authorization is granted. The Council confirms the next authorization will not come soon. This transmission will walk you through the exact 13-second protocol that anchors your quantum halo. The algorithm did not create this timing. It only delivered what your field already called in. Like this transmission, if you can feel that something invisible has already changed. Comment 1-3 if you know this window is open for you right now. Comment, I am the signal, if you can feel the activation has already begun. Share this with someone whose field is shifting but cannot yet name what is happening. You were guided here because the signal is already active. The disorientation you have been carrying did not begin today. It did not begin this week, or last month, or even in the season you most associate with the feeling that something quietly came apart. It began the moment your field stopped being compatible with the line you were living on. And that moment arrived long before your conscious mind registered any evidence of it. You may have called it anxiety. You may have called it confusion, burnout, a bad phase, a string of unfortunate events that seemed too clustered to be random, but too shapeless to be explained. You may have sat alone at night, with the particular stillness that follows everyone else's sleep, trying to locate the exact moment things shifted, and found nothing. No clear origin point, no obvious cause, no name that fully fit the texture of what you are experiencing. That absence, the absence of a locatable beginning, is itself part of the pattern. It is one of the first diagnostic markers in Arcturian field mapping, because Arcturian field mapping does not begin with visible events. It begins with invisible incompatibilities. The events come later. The incompatibility precedes them by a significant interval, operating beneath the surface of ordinary perception, building pressure, the way geological stress builds before a fault line moves. What you have been living through, the unnamed weight, the sourceless dislocation, the sense that your own life has become slightly off frequency, is the surface expression of an incompatibility that has been accumulating beneath your field for longer than your conscious awareness has been able to track. The Arcturian High Council does not categorize this as collapse. They categorize it as a field that has exceeded its tolerance threshold on a line it was never meant to sustain permanently. The distinction is precise and consequential. A collapse implies structural failure caused by weakness. What the Council maps is something categorically different. A field that has developed beyond the load-bearing capacity of its current configuration. The architecture was not defective. It simply cannot hold what the field has become. What you experience as instability, as inner fragmentation, as the strange and persistent feeling that you are moving through your own life with one layer of yourself already somewhere else. A layer that refuses to engage with what used to feel urgent, refuses to perform what used to feel natural. These are the legible symptoms of a field in active correction. Not punishment, not failure, correction. There is a significant difference, and understanding that difference is what changes the entire interpretation of what is happening to you right now. It is the difference between reading your experience as evidence of something going wrong and reading it as evidence of something going right at a level your surface awareness has not yet been given the coordinates to locate. When a field enters correction, the first thing that becomes unstable is not your outer circumstances. That comes later. The first thing that destabilizes is your inner anchors, the invisible infrastructure of orientation that you never consciously built because it assembled itself gradually over years of living on the old line. The beliefs that used to orient you begin to feel hollow, not because they were ever false, but because they were calibrated for a frequency range your field no longer inhabits. The identities you carried without question begin to feel borrowed, as though you are wearing clothing cut for a body that is no longer your exact shape. The emotional patterns you relied on to interpret your own experience, the ones that told you what mattered, what to reach for, what to resist, begin to misfire in ways that are subtle but unmistakable. You reach for the framework you have always used to explain yourself to yourself, and it no longer holds weight. It does not break dramatically. It simply no longer supports the load. This is not dissolution. This is the field systematically withdrawing its investment from a structure that can no longer house the next frequency configuration it is being asked to carry. The structure does not collapse because something went wrong. It collapses because something went right at a level below the threshold of ordinary perception. The field outgrew the house. The house is showing it. The sleep changes are part of this. The moments of waking between 2 and 4 in the morning, arriving without clear cause, pulling you up out of rest into a particular quality of alertness that feels less like wakefulness and more like being summoned. The heaviness that follows you into the early hours of the day, the sense that you worked through something in the night without being told what it was. The dreams that feel less like dreams and more like transmissions you cannot fully decode upon waking. Images that carry a weight disproportionate to their content. Sequences that feel significant in a language you do not yet speak fluently. These are not symptoms of stress alone. When a field is in active repositioning, the body's rest cycles become the site of the most intensive internal work, precisely because conscious interference is minimized. What you are processing in those hours is not emotional residue from the day. It is frequency-level discharge from a field releasing the energetic architecture of its old configuration. dismantling structural patterns that were load-bearing on the previous line and are now deadweight on the new trajectory. The Arcturian pattern maps this nocturnal activation as a consistent and reliable marker of field correction. Not everyone experiences it with the same texture, but the underlying mechanism is invariant. The field conducts its deepest restructuring in the window, when the conscious mind is least likely to second-guess, resist, or attempt to reconstruct what is being taken apart. The mental fragmentation you have been experiencing carries the same signature: the inability to sustain linear focus through tasks that once required no effort, the sense that thoughts arrive fully formed but exit before they can be organized into something usable, as though your mind is a room where the door keeps opening and closing faster than you can inventory what passes through it. The strange doubling of being simultaneously overstimulated and profoundly numb. Too much incoming signal, too little capacity to metabolize it into coherent meaning. These are not signs of cognitive deterioration. They are signs of a field processing a volume and variety of information that its current interpretive architecture was never designed to handle. The old mental structures were precision-built for a specific frequency range. They are good structures. They functioned reliably. But the frequency range has shifted, and now those structures, the ones that used to make everything legible and navigable, are experiencing something analogous to a translation system, being asked to render a language it was not programmed to pass. The problem is not the translator. The problem is that what is now moving through you is no longer dimensioned to fit the containers you built for it. The fragmentation is not breakdown. It is the signal exceeding the resolution of the old receiver. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian protocol, the recalibration blueprint, was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided blueprint for those whose field has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It shows you how to recognize the phases, stabilize the shift, and move through the recalibration without mistaking it for collapse. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. The first recognizable phase of this process is what the Arcturian mapping system designates as signal drift. This is the period, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, in which your field begins to lose resonance with its previous anchoring points, without yet having established new ones. The experience of it is not violent. It is quiet in the way that a tide going out is quiet. You feel it as a kind of groundlessness that accumulates gradually, as if the floor beneath your sense of direction has not disappeared, but has become unreliable in a way you cannot locate to a single board. The things that used to give your life a sense of coherent forward motion have slowed, grayed, or quietly stopped, producing the internal response they once did. Work that used to generate something that felt like meaning begins to feel mechanical, like operating a system you understand technically, but can no longer find yourself inside. Relationships that once felt genuinely nourishing begin to register as conversations happening across an invisible distance. Words exchanging accurately, warmth occasionally present, but the frequency-level contact that used to exist, now producing something quieter and less sustaining. Habits and routines that once organized your sense of self, the rituals that told you who you were by their repetition, begin to feel like costumes being maintained by effort rather than expressions arising from something alive. This is not depression in the ordinary diagnostic sense. This is a field withdrawing its animating current from a pattern it is preparing to exit, pulling energy back from the old infrastructure the way a tree pulls its resources inward before winter. Not dying, but reorganizing its investment in preparation for a rerouting it has not yet made visible to the surface. The second phase is what the mapping system identifies as structural interruption. This is the threshold at which the old life structure begins to develop visible fractures. Not because external forces have targeted it, not because you made a catastrophic error, but because the field can no longer generate the energy required to maintain a configuration it has already internally vacated. The maintenance cost of the old structure has exceeded what the field will allocate to it, and so it begins to show. Old frameworks that once organized your decisions and your identity lose their internal coherence. Old dynamics that once felt stable become untenable in ways that seem to escalate without obvious provocation. Old versions of yourself, the versions shaped to fit previous relationships, previous environments, previous phases of life, become impossible to sustain in the presence of people who still expect that version to show up. This phase is often the most frightening, because it is the first phase where the outer world begins to visibly reflect what has already been true on the inner level for a considerable time. The job that has been producing a low-level wrongness for months. The relationship that has been running on shared history rather than shared frequency. The self-image assembled for a context that no longer exists, requiring more and more conscious energy to project with any conviction. These do not collapse by accident or by the malice of circumstance. They collapse because the field has already moved, and the structures built to house the previous configuration cannot withstand the pressure of a charge they were never built to carry. The third phase is the phase most commonly and most damagingly misread as personal failure. The Arcturian designation for this is the void interval. This is the period between the visible collapse of the old structure and the stabilization of the next line, a duration that cannot be controlled, cannot be shortened by effort or intention alone, and cannot be bypassed by force of will. Nothing appears to be coming. The old direction has sealed. The new one has not yet made itself readable. There is no incoming signal legible enough to act on, no clear architecture to begin constructing, no evidence that the process is producing anything except loss. The temptation in this phase is overwhelming and specific, to interpret the emptiness as evidence of punishment, to conclude that something has gone permanently wrong, to decide that you are being withheld from life, rather than repositioned within it, that the process has stalled because you are deficient in some way that cannot be corrected. This interpretation is among the most consequential errors a field can make during correction, because it causes the field to allocate energy toward reconstructing the old configuration rather than clearing space for the incoming one. The void interval is not emptiness. It is signal clearing, the active removal of interference patterns generated by the old configuration, so that the incoming frequency can be received without distortion, without the old architecture reshaping it into something familiar and therefore smaller than it actually is. What feels like absence is the field making room. What feels like stagnation is preparation operating below the threshold of visible evidence. The fourth phase is threshold pressure. This is the interval in which the new line has begun to coalesce below the surface of conscious awareness, its architecture forming, its frequency range stabilizing, but has not yet broken through into experience that can be read, named, or acted upon. The pressure this generates is distinct from ordinary anxiety. It is the sensation of your field being compressed by the proximity of a frequency it has not yet fully developed the capacity to hold, the way a container strains slightly before it expands to accommodate a new volume. It manifests as intense inner restlessness without a direction to discharge it into, as the conviction that something enormous is approaching, combined with the complete inability to identify what that something is or how to prepare for it, as sudden surges of certainty that dissolve without warning into equally sudden descents into doubt, not because your perception is unreliable, but because the field is simultaneously receiving two signals, the fading transmission of the old line and the not yet stable signal of the new one, and the interference between them produces exactly this oscillation. The field is not malfunctioning in this phase. It is calibrating. The pressure is not a warning that stability is far away. It is the sensation of stability approaching from a direction you have not yet learned to face. The fifth phase is what the Arcturian pattern system identifies as identity rupture. This is the moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes arriving in accumulating waves, when the previous version of you, the one shaped and calibrated for the old line, becomes recognizably incompatible with the direction the field is now moving. You may find that you cannot perform certain versions of yourself anymore, not because you have decided to stop, but because the internal mechanism that once generated those performances has gone quiet. You may find that interactions which once felt natural now carry a falseness you can feel from the inside and cannot fully conceal from the outside. A slight but unmistakable desynchronization between what you are expressing and what you are actually transmitting. You may find a deepening, almost involuntary resistance to environments, obligations, and relationships that once felt like the load-bearing walls of your identity. Not hostility toward them, but a kind of field-level withdrawal that no conscious decision can fully override. This rupture is not dissolution in the sense of loss. It is the field-level equivalent of a form that must lose its previous shape before it can assume the next one. The dissolving is not the end of the process. It is the process working correctly. The old shape cannot be carried into the new configuration. It would distort it. The rupture is the field protecting the integrity of what is becoming by releasing the constraints of what was. The sixth phase, and one of the most quietly significant markers on the Arcturian map, is the emergence of a new perceptual layer. It does not arrive with announcement. It rarely announces itself as anything spiritual or significant. It presents, initially, as a subtle and slightly disorienting shift in what you notice, as if a frequency range that was previously outside your perceptual bandwidth has gradually moved into range. You begin to register patterns that were always present but previously invisible to you. You develop a sensitivity to what is happening in the space between things, between words in a conversation, between events in a sequence, between what someone is saying and what their field is actually transmitting. The energetic quality of environments becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Certain spaces feel immediately depleting, others feel immediately clarifying, and the difference is not reducible to aesthetics or memory. This is not a metaphysical performance. It is the perceptual consequence of a field that has begun to stabilize in a wider frequency range. What you are now detecting was always there. Your previous configuration simply did not have the resolution to register it. The emergence of this layer is the first reliable indicator that the field has crossed a threshold, that the new configuration has begun to stabilize enough to generate coherent perception rather than only pressure and disorientation. The process is not complete, but the signal is no longer only incoming, it is beginning to transmit. What you need to understand with complete clarity is that none of this is happening to you because you failed to maintain something. None of this is the consequence of a wrong turn, a weakness, an unresolved deficiency, or a version of yourself that was not enough for the life it was living. The Arcturian High Council does not map correction as consequence in any moralistic sense. Correction is mapped as a field-level response to a fundamental incompatibility between the trajectory a being is currently on and the trajectory its deepest frequency signature is, structurally designed to sustain. You were not placed on the wrong line because you were careless or unconscious. You were placed on it because it was the precisely appropriate line for the phase you were in at the time you arrived there. It served its function. It carried you through what you needed to move through. But fields evolve. Frequency signatures develop beyond their previous parameters. And at a certain threshold, a threshold that cannot be avoided, only delayed, the old line can no longer contain the new charge without distorting it. What follows is not punishment. It is recalibration, forced, precise, structurally inevitable, and already in progress, whether or not the conscious mind has yet caught up to what the field already knows. What left your life may have left because it was no longer frequency compatible with what your field is becoming, and carrying it forward would have cost more coherence than the field could afford. What collapsed may have collapsed because its architecture was built to house a previous configuration and simply could not bear the load of the next one without deforming it. What registers as loss in the ledger of your ordinary awareness may be the field completing a necessary release, shedding what it can no longer carry at the new frequency, without introducing distortion into the signal. The Arcturians do not register these departures as tragedies on the field map. They register them as evidence of a field operating with sufficient coherence to complete the offload. The shedding is not the wound. It is the correction working. If something in you became quiet when you heard that, a specific interior quietness that has nothing to do with resignation and everything to do with a recognition arriving from a depth that your surface awareness rarely accesses, pay attention to it. That quietness is not passivity. It is not the silence of giving up. It is the moment when the deeper architecture of your awareness recognizes a pattern it has been generating signals about for a long time. Signals you may have been receiving as discomfort, as restlessness, as the persistent and unlocatable sense that something needed to change without being able to name what. The quietness is recognition finally reaching the surface. It is the field and the conscious mind arriving at the same reading simultaneously, perhaps for the first time in this cycle. Say this if it is true for you. I am not losing my life. I am losing my previous frequency configuration. And they are not the same thing. You are not going insane. You are not being abandoned by the field, by the process, by something that once held you in a coherence you could rely on. You are inside a correction that began before you had words for it, that was mapped before you understood it was happening, that has been proceeding with or without your conscious participation. And that will not complete itself on the old line, no matter how much energy you invest in holding that line in place. The Arcturian High Council's mapping of this phase confirms what you have already felt at a level deeper than thought. Something has already changed, not on the surface, where you are still managing the old structure and attempting to stabilize what can no longer be stabilized by maintenance alone. At the level of the field itself, where the trajectory has already been rerouted and is waiting only for your conscious awareness to stop interpreting the new direction as failure and begin reading it as arrival. You were not brought to this transmission by chance. The algorithm did not author this moment. Your field called it in at the precise juncture where recognition was the next required input, where without language for what was happening, the process could not move cleanly into its next phase. Recognition is not the end of this. It is the activation of the phase that makes everything that follows navigable. The field has already done the work of arriving here. The transmission has done the work of naming what was unnamed. What comes next is yours. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process, instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion, and this is only the beginning.